Now the stuff happens. Webinar is now streaming live. Click down here, posts. I think I have to keep that stupid window open. Stupid window. Update posts. Currently just showing a picture of my profile photo having updated, which is some of the most popular content that I create as a leader and coach. I think we're live now. I'm just going to click this thing and then I do the mute thing. There we go. Mute. Great. It's working. Wow. That video looks just terrible. I'm going to trust that that's going to get better. And if it doesn't, if anyone, oh, it did get better. Okay, great. So, and I don't want a giant thing of Lian's name sitting there. I want gallery. There we go. All right. Now we're talking. Guys, it's time. Let's start the way we always start, by a live pouring of the hot beverage. We've got my favorite tiger mug. We've got some lemon ginger tea. We've got 2 viewers already. This live is blowing up. Well, I'm going to say some jokes, but before I say jokes, let's drink hot beverages. Not a strong nose on this tea. That's the first thing I notice. Hard to tell the legs in this mug, but I trust it's got some pretty good legs on it. Let's have a sip. Stroke the beard as we think about that sip. Well, it's definitely tea I just drank. Okay, let's try another one. Oh, that is lovely stuff. A lovely cuppa. As I was saying, while I was faffing about, I'm going to put some distraction. I've got a book and a pen. I'm just going to put them over here so as not to be distracted. As I was faffing about getting ready, I have one of the most recent posts on my page is like me updating the profile photo because it was out of date and I wanted to update it. And based on the feedback, based on the response, that seems to be some of the most valuable content I create as a coach and a leader, is updating my profile photo. So I'm thinking of creating some new form of leadership coaching, maybe a course. Lian and I were talking about courses, possibly one focused around profile photos or dogs eating hot dogs or something like that. I don't know. I don't know if this is a complaint or a joke or a funny story or a sad story. I'm not totally clear. Anyhow, I'm going to now move on past it. That'll feel good. Let's have another sip of tea first. We want to get fully teed up. It's been a super interesting week for me. Maybe for you too, but you're not on camera yet, whoever you are. So I spent the first part of it sitting in ceremony, which means I was in 4 days of what we would call ceremony. And that included, I was sitting with the shaman that I work with over here named Naite, and it meant a pretty restricted diet. So no sugar, no salt, no red meat or pork, no dairy, no anything, none of the stuff I like to eat. It meant spending a lot of time in solitude and quiet, and then working with plant medicines. And if you're curious about my most recent experience, I've written a post. You can go read it. I'm not going to read it to you right now. That'd be weird use of our time together. But I was really present to how much like any real deep transformative work is really like a willingness to sit in ceremony. And a lot of stuff comes up when you prepare and decide to sit. When you choose yes to ceremony, you're choosing yes into a container. You're making a commitment. And with that commitment, there's often a bunch of sacrifice. Like even just that idea of giving up salt, sugar, and red meat and pork. For some people, that might not be a thing at all, but for most people, that's like, oh, bloody hell, that's like a lot of stuff. That's going to be a pain in my ass, which it is. It's kind of the point. And so one of the things I think is really beautiful about ceremony is it prepares you for what is required when we commit to stuff in life. Most of the time, we use the word commitment without any of the, I don't know what the right word here is, but like any of the oomph, any of the commitment behind it. We talk about commitment, but we don't have any of the being of commitment behind it. And so people will often talk about a couple of things. One, especially early on, I would often have people come to me. They were like, well, can we like find a way, maybe you could coach me for free and I'll like write a review for you or something like that. Or they would just say, oh, I don't need to put money in. Like, I really get it, Adam, for those people. It's always for those people. But for me, like, I really commit with my time. So money, not so important, which is a funny, first of all, it's just an interesting distinction to draw for yourself. Like, there's a way that you construct your commitment, and that way you don't have to worry about the money or anything like that. In truth, when you really commit to something, when you really choose into any kind of ceremony, and I would include a coaching relationship as a form of ceremony, it's a full being based commitment. There is no I commit this way but not over here with these ways. And we have to give something up. So often when people are on the precipice of choosing into a committed coaching relationship, they're in a conversation with themselves like, can I fit this in? Does it make sense for me to do this right now? Does this work? And those are all kind of questions that are rooted in, here's the way my life already is. And does this fit into that structure that's already there? And it's a very reasonable, it's a very understandable approach. The flaw in it is that coaching is about creating a life that doesn't fit into what you already have. It's not about bolting some new little gadget onto the side of what you're already doing so you can do what you're already doing more, better. It's about creating an entirely new life, one that you're designing to be exactly the way you want, rather than like a slight tweak on the way things currently are. It doesn't mean you have to throw everything out, but it does mean that to be a yes to it, predictably, it's not going to be a sort of thing that may fit in. Like, we'll see if it works. It's by definition creating that kind of life, and saying yes to the thing that's going to support you in creating that life really requires a willingness on our part to make it happen, to be willing to make the sacrifices that are going to be called for to actually say yes to that thing. And so every time I sit in ceremony, I'm preparing again for a smaller ceremony that I'm facilitating and taking part in this Sunday. So we're 2 days out. I'm once again in a bit of a diet, an intentional diet and stuff like that. And anytime we prepare ourselves for that, I find it deepens my ability to sit in an appreciation for commitment, for sacrifice, for giving over a part of myself so as to create something deeper. And every time I do that, one of the things I get present to is that we don't tend to like doing that. Our society tends not to really be structured these days around what you have to give up. It's about hacking your life so that you can get something without having to do very much different. Maybe you have to read an hour a week, make some kind of sacrifice, but we're really concerned with like optimization and life hacks. What are the tricks that I can do so I can have a different experience of life without really having to change the way I'm being in my life? And if that's working for you, power to you. But my experience has been that tends to give us a life that is like more of what we already have. And when people really get to the point where they're like, damn it, I want something beyond this. I want something greater. When people are finally ready and willing to have a conversation that you might have with a coach or with a leader, it's because they want something that's not just more of the same. They don't just want to turn the volume up on the song that's already playing. They want to completely shift the way things are going for themselves. And that requires something. It requires a willingness to give up certain things. It requires a willingness to give up comfort. It requires a willingness to say like, yeah, I'm going to have to say no to some stuff that otherwise I would love to say yes to. I think an analog to this, knowing nothing about it myself as a man, but is probably pregnancy. That's like a 9 month and then some, probably a whole ton on either side of ceremony, where the woman, and to a lesser extent the man's still involved, I hope. But certainly to the woman, she has to give up certain things. She has to prepare herself. She has to say, I'm going to release some of these things that I really love doing because there's something deeper and greater that I want to create. And then Lian's a parent. She may share with us, and any of you that are parents probably know, like, yeah, that ceremony never ends, which is funny because that's exactly what my shaman said as we finished up this past weekend was, yeah, the ceremony never ends. It's always ongoing from here forward. And all you're doing is deepening in your exploration. So that's the first thought that's on my mind. What's the second thought? Do you guys know? I'm gonna drink tea and see if that's where the second thought is. Hey, Kristen. Hey, Carl. Carl Walkinshaw. Do people mispronounce your name, Carl? I wonder. My last name's Quiney, but people cannot get that. There's something about that configuration of letters. I don't know if there's a code in it or some hidden linguistic thing in our tongues that it's impossible for people to say Quiney. It always comes out as Quinny, or they throw a C, they call it Quincy. I wonder if Walkinshaw is, or maybe you say Walkinshaw or something like that. It could be like a Welsh name. I don't know. All the time. Okay, yeah. Solidarity, I feel like you and I get it. Hello, Heather. Good morning. Oh, it's nice. We got people. Now we got some engagement, guys. This is more fun. This feels good. I like it when it's not just me talking. I find I'm the least interesting person on these conversations. Hey, you know what? On that note, we should bring someone more interesting on camera. Let's get Lian on here. Lian, turn your video on, turn your mic on. Okay, there we go. I was wondering if you were, oh my God, I did it. It worked. How's it going?
It's good. My son's just called the other dog. And so this dog who was lying down has just got up. So I'm sorry. I may need to do that. Let's hope not.
You got some wires crossed. Some dog wires crossed.
In a moment. This is animals and children that you're just talking about. Yeah, this is ceremony.
Do you need to take care of this?
I don't know. Give me a sec.
Get this handled. Yeah. Oh, get him over there.
We'll try this.
Get him in that corner. Great. Good stuff. I need a book and something to write with. I set these aside, but now I want them because I might take notes as we talk. How was that for you? Sitting there all giddy, as I know you were before we started.
Oh, I just did a ton of stuff. I multitasked. I'm going to let the dog out so that we just don't have to deal with this. Hang on a second.
Away, Winston. Winston, is that his name?
Oh.
Is it Winston?
How was it? It was great. I've been giddy and mostly just that.
Giddy because you just launched a course and you just got a sale, right?
Yeah.
Keep it cool. Keep it cool. I can see the internal voice there. Just gonna open a window here. Get a fan going. So what time are you working with here? You're 6:15?
Nearly 6:15.
And have you had a good week?
Had an amazing week. Yeah, just everything I touch is turning to gold this week.
Certainly something everyone can relate to. That's a good way to start.
Yeah, no,
I love having those weeks. Was there more to say?
No, it's been a really good week.
Yeah, my week's been really interesting. Like I've had moments feeling like that, like, wow, I cannot do wrong. Every conversation I'm in, I know, I really feel in my heart is making a huge impact, a huge difference. And then ironically waking up and just being like, meh. And I don't know why meh, but just meh. There's a meh in my being that's like, nope, I'm grouchy about something and I don't know what it is. And it's just there. And okay, I guess what there is to do is to be grouchy for a little bit. And then sure enough, that passes and I get to have the next conversation and it turns to gold. And yeah, it's cool.
Yeah, mine's just been all gold, so I can't relate.
Cool. Well, congrats on that. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So what are we going to talk about, Lian? What's on the table? Oh, actually, before you say that, I want to share how we know each other. Yeah, you just keep it stum for a sec. So we've known each other for, Facebook told us what, a year and a little bit now? Has it almost been 2?
Yeah.
2, oh, I'm already committing cardinal sins. And we've become very fast friends, originally through my arrogance, I believe is how we first met, right?
I would say it's through the medium of your arrogance. I love how you're claiming that, though.
So we had, I think I'd posted a video maybe or something like that in a group we were both a part of. Lian had reached out. You'd put a comment, I think, right? Saying, I think you'd be great on my podcast. Would you like to come and chat? And then share for everyone just so they can get a sense of just the fullness and the richness of my arrogance.
So if I recall, I can't remember the words. It was more just the experience I had was you kind of like, yeah, okay, yeah, fine. Like, I might have time for that. And I was like, oh, it's like that, is it? And so didn't message you. And it was just, I kind of, I don't offer, I mean, I very rarely comment on someone's video and say, you must come on, like, that's really rare. And so for
I
me,
should have known that.
Gesture. And then it was like, yeah, that fell flat. So I then blanked you for maybe 2-3 months.
So like, let's just lay out the timeline. It's helpful for everyone to understand the minefield that they're working through on the internet. I think what I said was, I would love to do that. Could you send me a message or something like that so that we can make it happen? And then not knowing what a grand gesture, like a magnanimous, really, like very, very sort of coming down to my level gesture that you had made. And then for me to just sort of be so flippant about it, I got what was coming to me. And then 2 months later, please share the rest.
I think if I remember rightly, I had a dream about you. You just popped up in my dream. And I woke up thinking, my goodness, the man's arrogance. He replies to me like, and then has the audacity to just turn up in my dream. And I do tend to take a lot of notice of those messages, you could say, from subconscious in all the different ways they can kind of filter through. It just happened that one was in my dream. And so I was like, maybe I'll give him another chance.
Again, so generous.
I know. So I then reached out to you. I can't remember if I said straight away that about your arrogance, but I did just say something like, apologies for the delay. I said I was going to message you. Here I am 2 months later, or however many months it was.
And then we got on a podcast together and rapidly like, wow, we've got really good energy with each other. And then a friendship came from that.
Yeah. I forgave you for your arrogance.
Yes. The thing I really love about that story is it's no surprise to anyone, hopefully at this point, that I have a propensity towards that. That comes with some of the territory. It's not my intention to just be like, well, I'm arrogant, sister, get over it. That's not who I'm committed to being. But like, I could spend the rest of my life working my hardest to not to not ever be arrogant. And I'm going to probably be arrogant in my attempts to do so. Like, it's just sort of part of the way I'm thrown. And what I love about that story is, at least from where I was coming from, there was no like, oh, I'm better than you or anything at all in my space. And that's what got created. So I love that, it's, it really doesn't matter what we think was happening or what we were trying to happen. All that really matters is like, hey, what's going on in the moment? And cool, do we clean it up? And what's available on the other side of that? And we've created like this amazing friendship with like a lot of supporting each other and, like just growing our own being and our own work through the friendship that got created on the other side of that arrogance. So thank goodness I got over myself in this story. Hey.
Yeah.
Tenuous for a while. Okay, cool. So, what are we going to talk about? What's on the table?
Right. So this, as I was, so I'll just kind of say the thing, but then if it's helpful, give a bit of history to it as well. So what I would love to explore is this ongoing thing I've got around talking about myself, but particularly my work. But I think honestly, it's myself, full stop, outside of a work context. So inside of a work context, it feels completely appropriate and fairly easy. Outside of a work context, and the example I gave, which is kind of like really symbolic of kind of this is the most extreme. If someone says to me, what do you do? As in, what do you do for a living? Then, oh my goodness, it's like immediate trigger in my system. And I have kind of, I mean, the first thing that happens, I just go completely blank. And then I just notice I'm just scrabbling for words. And and I often like to give myself thinking time. It happened literally a couple of weeks ago when our financial advisor came over, and it's the first time we'd met him. What do you do? And I heard him and I just thought, I've gone blank again. So I had to pretend I hadn't heard him to ask him again, sorry, what was it you said? And then he said, like, what do you do? And I said, oh, me, to stall for a bit longer. Like,
oh, well, you're not talking to the person behind me.
My children. And then I kind of managed to garble something that half makes sense at best. And this is something that I have worked on with at least my last 2 coaches, and it has or not improved. And so the last couple of times I've answered someone, it's definitely been a lot better than it used to be, where I used to just think I'll just try and bark out some words like, oh, it's a bit weird, I'm a coach. Anyway, sorry, what was that?
So are you still talking to me?
So it's an improvement. I just think there must be something more available here.
Got it. That makes sense. I'm just going to close this right here. There we go. So thank you for that excellent laying out of of how it goes. Very amusing. So you've done work on this already? Like what have you distinguished, or what have you kind of unearthed in your exploration of this so far?
Oh gosh, so much. So I may not be able to recall it all and put it in a great order, but I think in short, I think there's a number of places this potentially could come from. And hey, you know, it's always hard to know, and sometimes we don't really need to, but I think there has been a tendency for me to feel more comfortable to kind of dim myself, so I'm more acceptable to others, particularly other women. And
I just want to check in, this is what you have already, like through the work with the other coaches, or is this you sort of trying to distinguish in the moment?
Exactly, yeah, what I distinguished with my work. So there's been a kind of, I don't want to make someone else feel uncomfortable or intimidated or less than, so I will then just make myself look like a complete clown instead. So that's part of it. And then there's another aspect which is around me being willing to, I guess, just be seen in my greatness, my fullness, where in the past that's been shown to be dangerous. And so it's safer to kind of not, you know, to blend in, to just seem average, to seem normal. And then there's a piece which honestly I struggle to, even with all the times I've looked at this, which I've tested it out in my brain. Like if I did a kind of what's the word, respectable kind of job, say for example I was a lawyer, I think I would still struggle. Not as much. I think I still would. And so I find that interesting. Or even just, let's say something that, I mean, a lawyer could sound quite impressive, I suppose, to say something that's a bit more, I don't know, accountant. Imagine me as an accountant. So even then, I feel
pizza delivery person.
Yeah, it would still feel like a bit weirdly difficult.
So is it only, like you mentioned, sort of in a work context, you're fine talking about who you are, whatever. And then it sounds like this specifically kind of shows up with work. Is that right?
I think it's where it shows up most. I mean, honestly, I notice, and I think you and I have spoken about this before, I definitely have a tendency to make the conversation more about the other person. So I'm really great at connecting. As you know, part of my essence is love, but the way I'll kind of keep the spotlight on the other person and ask them a lot of questions and make it about them. So I think I have to feel really comfortable with someone to really want to talk about myself, probably at all. It's just it kind of, I think it's at its peak when it's to do with a I think my work is probably the biggest example of like who I really am, what I can be in the world. And so that's the place that it is most difficult.
Got it. Okay. So let me make sure I'm hearing you right. Like you can see certain places where this also might show up, but like work is kind of the fullest, you feel most fully expressed in what you do. And so consequently, there's like, it feels like this is sharpest with
Yes.
regards to that. Got it. Okay. So, and you've kind of uncovered like, oh, maybe there's some dimming my light well, dimming your light. And there's two kind of reasons that you found. One is to make other people not be intimidated or have whatever reaction there is to you shining as bright as you do. And the other is to stay safe a little bit. There's a level of danger in shining in your fullness.
Yeah.
You had that right? Okay. So anything else that you've uncovered before we sort of go into it?
It's something I was pondering, because obviously I knew that we're going to look at this today, and I was pondering when I was walking the dogs, thinking, let me just see if I can distill this. I know that the reason this feels so is because I'm making it all about me, and I know that, and it really, the reason I guess I even want to be able to talk about my work is because I deeply believe it has value. And quite often the people asking me are not my financial advisor, but apart from my financial advisor, the people who often ask me are people who I know are likely to be really interested and get real value from my work. And so it's interesting that I know the way forward would be to not make it about me, but in the moment, that's just not available. Like it's probably one of the most intense experiences I get. It's such a level of activation and just intensity. I just don't seem to have availability to where I can normally sort of take a breath and have other choices. That just doesn't seem available. It's like my focus is so on me.
Yeah.
In a way that is clearly, I'm making it about me, but I don't really seem to have any other options but to.
Right. Okay. And so that totally makes sense. And like, how have the conversations in the past around this typically, like, it sounds like you've done a bunch of work around this. So I'm kind of, and my hunch is you want to arrive at something perhaps different or deeper than it's gone in the past. So this is not about like, let's see how it sucked in the past, but more I'm curious, like, how does the conversation around this, when you've looked at it with other coaches, how does it typically go?
Oh, I think I've looked at it in so many different ways. And again, I really want to be clear here that there definitely has been an improvement. It's not like I don't think I've got benefit from the work I've done. And it's really hard to say, oh, it's typically, I mean, my current coach often coaches via kind of shadow work, like process shadow work. My previous coach was very kind of archetypal. So it's been quite different. But ultimately, I guess, looking at the reasons that this makes sense to me as a way of showing up, and looking at kind of, I guess, what's possible for me. And again, that has definitely created some spaciousness. But in terms of answering your question, like, what would I guess, how would I like this to go?
Well, the first question I actually answered was, how does it predictably go? Like, how has it gone in the past? So you've already answered that. I would love to know the question you're now speaking to, which is like, where would you like to end up, really? What do you want to leave with?
I mean, the holy grail would be me being able to, and again, I feel there's something really symbolic about this. I think if I could meet that question, what do you do, with an open heart, and it just flow, not have this kind of moment. Going back years ago when I first started coaching, I think I'd like memorized a line that I could just about kind of throw out of them. So that's not where I want to be. I want to be able to just rock up open-hearted and just be with that person, be present, and whatever is there to be said. That would be the holy grail, to get to the point where that felt possible.
Got it. Let whatever is there to be said be said. It sounds like you're not experiencing yourself with an open heart currently when this shows up.
No, again, because I'm just so, it's all about me. It's all just, oh my goodness, I'm going to die. It's really real that I'm going to die right now.
High stakes.
Yeah. So yeah, it really, and again, that's where I see the possibility here is, for me, you know, my work is very much about the person that I'm serving, the people, the women that I'm serving. And so, yeah, to be able to show up like that in those conversations would be pretty cool.
Pretty cool.
Really
Okay.
Cool. Really cool.
Okay, cool. So basically, to be able to kind of, it sounds like what happens is you go up into your head, more or less. Is that right?
Yes,
you get up here and like, oh my God, I'm going to die and I have to manage everything. And where you want to stay is kind of grounded in self, open heart, whatever, and then just be in whatever is there to be said. Mm-hmm. Got it. Okay, cool. Makes sense. I can relate to a lot of that too. Like I remember my early days of when people are like, what do you do? I would say I'm a coach. And then like, I don't know what a negative amount of space looks like if you were writing it out, but it would be like the next word I was going to say was crammed over on the word coach. It'd be like, I'm a coach and I'm also a lawyer and I also have a background in project management and software and blah, 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 blah. And people would be like, oh, what the fuck? That was weird. So I totally get it. And I'm sure a lot of people watching also can relate to that. So what's the current strategy that you have? Like, I get it's not going the way you want, and that there's some stories around this that you've unearthed. What are the strategies you're currently employing to try to like resolve this?
And this is kind of going back over time too, because I guess I've tried a whole bunch. So back in the day, as I said, it was actually just to try and memorize, like, I will say X and that will save me. Mm-hmm. And I could just about like squeak it out. And then it would just end up in exactly the same situation where I'd be like, oh my goodness, I just want to exit this conversation as quickly as I can. And then other strategies I would have, and this has probably been my most recent up until my new strategy, is to just make my work sound as like boring as possible, and then quickly ask them something.
Give me an example of that.
I'm kind of a coach. Yeah, it's a bit hard to explain. Anyway, so what is it you do? Something like that. Nice.
Good dismount.
Smooth. Really, really smooth.
Yeah. Okay.
And then the more recent one has been to, and this is where I'm saying there has been marked improvements. The last couple of times I have actually ended up in a conversation. So the first bit has been clumsy and me kind of white knuckling it and attempting to breathe, garbling a bit. And then when they've like realized, okay, there is something interesting what she's saying, they then ask a question. And then in that, I then seem to be able to talk like a normal person to an extent. Again, to the extent last summer, when it happened, I ended up with having a like half an hour really in-depth conversation with a woman. So probably the first time it's ever happened, because it's the first time I've even been available for that to happen. So, but there is also, I see a kind of wider pattern or strategy, which is honestly to avoid, like for me, going to a networking event would be ridiculous. There'd be no point. Like, can you imagine? I would just be making small talk about the breakfast and admiring everyone's clothes. Like, it would just be pointless. So that's the wider strategy. I just avoid, I mean, you can't avoid random people asking you, but I avoid situations where that's really likely to happen.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so it all sort of makes sense. Like, there's all these strategies to kind of, just going to close that. People message me and then I have to close that. So all strategies designed to avoid some underlying experience that seems to sort of show up when confronted by this. And it's really cool because I know you have a pretty thriving coaching practice. And so I really, I want to acknowledge who you are that's created a lot in the face of this. And it's really exciting to me, like, man, if Lian could blow this open, holy shit, what would become available on the other side of it? Like, I could imagine just sort of, you're pushing a lot through a hose that's got a small, doesn't sound like a big one, but a small kink in it. Like, if we straighten that out, there might be something really profound available on the other side. So, okay, so you'll have like, one thing is I've got a specified thing to say, blah, there, your elevator pitch or whatever. Another is you'll make your work sound boring and say it really quick. And it also sounds like when you'll speak to it, it's kind of a little vague and hand wavy. Like, I'm sort of a coach and I do some stuff. Let's talk about you and your stuff. And then the third is just avoid the conversation entirely. So what is the worst case scenario in this? Like, what are you really afraid in all of this?
And do you mean at a conscious level, or the sort of underlying subconscious fears that I've identified? Which are basically what I guess I pointed out earlier.
Yeah, I'm kind of wondering, like, just from like a fear-based level, because like all of what you just said is super smart, and our fear is kind of dumb, right? Our fear is like, oh my God, they're looking at you funny. They think you're a dork. That tends to be more how our fear operates, rather than like, oh my God, they're forming a judgment of me, and that means that they blah, blah, blah. And that means historic, that's tends not to be how our fear operates.
What occurs to me, I had an interesting experience today, which links to this, where, as you know, I've started doing a monthly column for our local paper, which has driven up a similar kind of situation where I'll have people who know me outside of my work, have seen that, and then bump into me and acknowledge me for it. And then the last time it happened, last month, it was just another one that I was like, oh my goodness, how quickly can I change the topic whilst appearing charming? Quite a feat.
Yep, and you're quite good at it.
Today, the deputy head at my children's school said, oh my goodness, I saw your column. It was amazing. I loved it. When's the next one? And I noticed for some reason, I actually was able to let that in. I went, oh, thank you so much. And then just talked about it. So I'm raising that because it suddenly seemed like, why was that possible when that's never been possible before? And because I've had two examples recently where the first example, that wasn't available to me. And so that's the most kind of recent one where the fear in that instance was, let me just go take myself back to that when the other woman said it to me, and I just, it's kind of like I think they're going to think I'm weird.
How weird? How?
I think it is that, because I could just feel the emotion come up as I said that. Just not normal, that kind of weird.
There's lots of flavors of not normal, right? Like,
I guess the unacceptable version of not normal, the just too much, too too expressive, too open-hearted, ironically. Not kind of, this seems like a really stupid thing to say, but like, not sensible isn't quite the right word, but like, doesn't fit into like the stuff that's important.
Like, doesn't fit into the stuff that's important. Right, because you kind of operate outside of the mold. I mean, we both do, right? That's the nature of this work is, like I was talking at the start, it's not about what's reasonable in your life, it's about like an unreasonable life. Got it. So she's weird, not normal, too much, too expressive, too open-hearted. Anything else?
Um, there's this which I suppose links that too much. There's like she thinks she's all that, like as if I think I'm better than I actually am, or I'm trying to claim credit for something more than I actually am.
Mm, let me make sure I get that down. So, like, they're going to think that I think I'm better than I am. Is that
Yeah.
right?
Mm,
Okay. And what was the other one? That I'm more than I am?
yeah. And I
Lynn
think I've
is,
I've told you this story before, but this really comes to mind as we're talking about it now, where when I was like young teens, like 13 or so, at senior school. So the best time to do this. I I still very similar to my daughter. I'd be forever writing poems and songs, and I was really happy to share them with the world. I had no kind of fear or embarrassment at that point. And I wrote a poem about every one of my classmates, and then stood up and read it in class. And I'm sure I have shared this story with you before, possibly on a show that we did together actually. And it really wasn't well received at all. It was totally complimentary. I mean, it was really me seeing the greatness and the beauty in my classmates. It was totally from love. And I think they were
yeah.
just like, oh my goodness, this is so uncool. This is so embarrassing. Oh my
Mm,
goodness, why has she done that? Which was totally reflected back at me. And so it really, this to me, in my mind, really links to that feeling of like, I've tried to kind of be a gift, give a gift,
yeah.
and that really wasn't welcome. Like, and then it also was almost like, who the hell do you think you are? Like, how would that have
Uh,
been acceptable?
don't you know how high school works or senior
Yeah.
school or whatever? Like we keep it, but and here you are just expressing love, you big
Yeah.
weirdo. Who the hell do
And
you
like
think
to
you
think you're
are?
even like good enough, or that's going to be welcome to be that. Like, yeah.
Got it. So what did you learn to do in that moment?
I think that's the point where I think it had a similar feeling to what I'm describing. I just shut down, where I'm just almost like in a box where I'm so aware of my own I can't, like, panic really, just that kind of whoosh of, oh my goodness, I'm in this like the experience of that. That's all I can really remember since. But I definitely took my expression down a lot of notches for a long
Right.
time after that.
So it kind of like my hunch is it's like you learn to dim the expression, except there's certain places like work where it's like there's a container for it, almost like it's already set up to be okay for you to be as expressed as you truly are. So if you're, what I heard you say at the start of this conversation was in a work context, you're like, no problem, I'll share for the rest of my life, I'll talk at length about this. But once you step outside of there, there's like we're in the realm of blurry boundaries, there's no real
Yeah.
container.
Well, I think exactly that. And that's why I think it's like that's the real world, which kind of relates to like schools, the real world.
Mm-hmm.
My children's school and the parents there are the real world. And whereas, and obviously this has been it's not like I've been in this line of work forever, but when I suddenly found that it was possible to do this amazing work and actually make a living from it, and it was something I was really good at and something that people really welcomed, it's like, oh, it's okay, I can be that there. People actually want it, people pay for it even.
Right.
And but that's not true anywhere else.
Got it. So what's the worst? Well, so it kind of makes sense. So anytime someone asks you about what you do, or really, I'm guessing asks you about you, like, is it just about what you do as work, or is it like tell me about you, Lian. Like, is that one an easy one for you to be with?
No, I honestly don't think it is. I think the work thing's the hardest, but even I think I'd go quite blank, honestly. Any question that was directed at me, about me.
Got it. Okay, so yeah, it's like any situation where there's an opportunity for you to express your fullness. If it's set up once the rules are in place, and I would imagine my hunch would be from this, you're quite good at setting up containers. Is that the case?
Yeah.
Great. Makes sense, right? Like, given that containers create the safe place to be fully expressed, and being fully expressed is part of who you are, there's a fullness and a richness to yourself. You would be pretty, like, that would be another strategy we might have learned growing up. All right, I'm gonna create a really powerful container. Now we can play.
Yes, totally. Like my close friends, if they were listening to this, they'd be like, that's not like, are you kidding? Like, in the right environment, I am total party animal. Total
Nice.
party animal. So it isn't like what I'm saying is all totally true in every real life situation. It was people have kind of, once I guess I've realized I'm safe with people and they do want all of me, they will get all of me.
Right. So it's kind of, you're in this, the real challenge sounds like it's in this place where it's riskier, basically. Like with the container, with friends, which is a form of container, there's a degree of safety. I know I can express myself fully. We've already got an implied, or even better at work, an express agreement that we are going to play full out. We're going to show up fully, et cetera, et cetera.
It's like a clear welcome. That's the word I'm really feeling. It's welcome versus unwelcome.
So I'm guessing you've had some evidence beyond just, I'm of a couple minds here. Let's go with the train of thought that's there right now. I'm guessing you've had some evidence beyond childhood and senior year or senior school, as you called it. I don't understand, the British school system is weird. We called high school. It's the same thing, right?
Yeah, secondary school.
Yeah, okay, senior year, whatever. So I'm guessing you've had evidence that this aspect of who you are is unwelcome in other situations aside just that one. Is that the case?
Yes.
Anything recent that we can sort of...
Like, you're a medium and I can only give you like really non-committal answers. Yes.
Yes, I feel very fully expressed in this moment, Adam. You're doing great.
Were you looking for an example?
Well, you're doing great, so you don't have to worry about that. I would be great, like, if we could have, like, do you have an example somewhat recently for us, just to kind of be able to look at that too?
That's a strange thing. It's the recent examples actually show the opposite. I've been absolutely amazed that I had, up until fairly recently, had like a persona that I thought was okay to be at my children's school, because that's the suburban housewife is the one that's welcome there. And then little by little, the mums that kind of know me from school, who then sort of, I don't know, discovered my podcast, or for example, would listen to it and then say to me, oh my goodness, I've listened to your podcast, I love it, which would be really hard for me to deal with. But it was only like, I've only got really beautiful, positive things. So the irony is, the evidence I've had has been for years really positive. I'm actually struggling to think of anything in the last... honestly, I can't think of anything in recent years that would give evidence that would show that this isn't welcome. It's behavior that's been learned from before that, for sure.
So that's super interesting to me too. Like, kudos on like it being so welcomed. And what's interesting about that is that in my experience, the world is never all one way. It tends to be a blend of like people being awesome and people being kind of boneheads. Not because there's anything wrong with being a bonehead, but just because we all have the capacity for both sides of those. You know what I mean? You're sitting very stoic. I just want to check in and make sure that you're with me so far.
I just thought of an example, which actually is funny, because I didn't think it it seems initially like it wasn't directly related, but I actually think it is exactly related. So I'm going to
So
share
let
this
me
is
let
worth
me
it.
yeah, let me pause you first because I want to speak to everyone listening, watching, which is say, notice like for Lian, she's kind of like, oh, well, I've practiced and it's all been positive. And in a coaching or leadership conversation, we always want to be curious when something's all one thing, because we would expect if you imagine someone just going into the world and being fully expressed, for some people, that's going to be really inspiring. But for other people that have learned for themselves, being fully expressed is wrong, they're going to project that same story onto Lian as she's fully expressed. So now I'm kind of curious, that's interesting. How has Lian been practicing or showing up so that she only gets the good parts of this? So that's where my curiosity is. Let's see what you've got to say, Lian,
Yeah,
and we'll
so I feel
play
like I'm
from
on a
there.
game show now. So a couple of things. Bear in mind, I haven't been being fully expressed. It's not like I've had in normal life. So it's not like I've actually had much opportunity to get feedback either way. Like the ones that I gave the example with, like I've snuck in because they found the
Right.
podcast without. It's not like I've gone to school like, hey guys, I've got a podcast. Come listen to my show. Like the opposite.
Right. So
Yeah.
it was an indirect
Yes.
expression of your full expression,
Exactly.
indirectly fully expressed. I love that
Yeah.
concept. Okay.
Exactly. And it's sort of self-selected in that it's unlikely that some random person is going to listen to my podcast and then come to me and tell me they hate me or hate it, because that would just be really rude and weird. So
There'd be
I
one
think
heck of a way to fully express yourself.
yeah, so that would be, I think that's partly the reason why it's generally been positive, because there isn't that many examples of the ones that are likely to be positive. But the one that just came to mind is slightly minor, but it really had an effect on me for quite some time. This is going back, I'm not kidding, 4 years maybe. And I'd done a show with another woman on the topics are relevant, but another coach for my podcast. And then got an email afterwards from a listener saying something like, in a nutshell, oh my goodness, like you were so annoying. You just was laughing all the way through it. I just wanted you to shut up so that so-and-so could talk. And like, oh my goodness, I can still remember the feeling that like that was just probably like my worst fear reflected back at me. Like, oh my God, that's just awful. And wow, I needed a lot of support around that to even ever laugh on our show again. And it's also very interesting, this I hadn't seen how this linked to it, because when I first started the podcast, which was, I don't know, 6-7 years ago, one of my fears about doing that was I'm going to be too much. People are going to get really annoyed of how much I laugh and how silly I can be. And then over the years, again, I've got so much beautiful positive feedback, and people literally saying I could listen to a whole show of you laughing, or I like so many times when people would compliment me, they'd say like, I just love your energy and your joy and you make me laugh every time you laugh. And then to get that, even though I had all this gorgeous feedback, to have that one thing reflecting the fear that I had.
Right.
Yeah.
So it is really an interesting point that you raise, which is like, it's really rare for, so one, that person was a bit of a dick. They reached out and sent you that message like, hey, thanks for going out of your way to tell me you didn't like me and that I was annoying. Thanks for making that extra mile. But also like, and hang on with me here, but like there's almost like a rare gem in that, because it sounds like really very rarely would you get that feedback given the ways and the places that you are fully expressing yourself.
Yes, they've chosen to listen to my show. So yeah.
And the places it sounds like you're fully expressing, you've already got a container where it's agreed upon, or people are finding their way in, and it's kind of like, well, you're in Lian's house. So, or she's expressing herself in a medium where for you to go and give her that feedback that she's afraid to get would require like 4 steps.
Yes.
Are you with me? This is making sense?
Totally. Yeah.
Okay. I'm not making anything up. That's how it occurs for you as well?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So
I think it was cool. I was were you saying like that person was a dick? I actually hadn't, I don't know why that's made me feel quite emotional. I actually hadn't seen it like that before.
That they were being a bit of a dick? Uh-huh. How were you seeing it?
I suppose really that they were right.
Thanks for the tenderness with that.
Yeah, I suppose as much as I did and can put it in perspective and say, well, that's just one person's view, and I've also got all these other people who love it, they're still entitled to their experience, and given their experience matches my deepest fear,
yeah,
they're not being a dick, they're right.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Do you need anything right now? You seem pretty clean with that, but I don't want to step over it.
No, it's just, it surprised me. You hear, like, first of all, it made me laugh, and then and then it was just like, I kept thinking, why is that really why does that keep going around in my head? And that's what it was. It's like, wow, I just actually hadn't seen it that way before. I think I have a tendency to, which is a good thing, you know, I know you're similar, you know, as someone who considers myself a leader, I will take responsibility and look for the gift, what's there for me. But I think my tendency could go too far that way and just like not leave anything for the other person to own.
Right. Yep. I'm well familiar with, I think that's one of the reasons we're friends. We're both very reliable to do work on this side of the fence.
Yeah.
To the point that we become almost irresponsible in how we do that. So, okay. So on the one hand, I'm curious how you're creating this kind of only get the positive, but it sounds that feels like kind of well-trodden territory. And I guess the other thing I'm kind of curious about is obviously, if your financial advisor or Joe Blogs off of the street, do you like how I'm using the British version of John Doe, Joe Blogs? You guys say Joe Blogs, right? Yeah, thank you. Joe Blogs off the street, they're not going to say, as you're in a conversation telling them what you do, they're not going to say, that was so annoying, you were laughing the whole time you were talking about what you were doing, I just want you to shut up so I could hear myself talk. They're not going to go to that extreme, right? That's not the kind of feedback they would give you. But what is the version of that you might get that you're kind of afraid of receiving?
Gosh, it's hard to identify that because I just don't do it, again, because I so have it on lockdown that, again,
well, I might not be clear what I'm asking, so I just want to make sure. So there is that feedback you got, very extreme, the negative feedback, right? Someone you're talking to on the street, as you're just sharing what you do, they may still be like, oh, that's kind of crappy the way Lian shared that. But they're not going to say that because they're polite and you're face to face. So my hunch is that given what you've shared, there's like a bit of a hypervigilance you have for this, where you're kind of like on the lookout, you're checking it out, and you've got some really effective strategies that are delightful and lovely, because I know you are delightful and lovely, but they also ensure that you don't get this kind of feedback ever. Yes. Or maybe once in a blue moon. So I'm curious.
Yeah. But I suppose I'm right. There's two things that I think are at play here, though. I think it's partly I don't get the feedback because I'm keeping myself so on lockdown in situations where, like, again, I don't do this like, oh, I do this and it's amazing. I'm like I just don't do that. So I'm not going to get the feedback. But it's definitely been reflected to me by people who know me well that I do have this it's funny really, because it's been reflected to me two different ways. One, this kind of saintly kind of thing that I've got going on, which you're well aware of, and the other one is this kind of quite intimidating, like it's quite unusual for people to disagree with me or challenge me, like it just doesn't happen very often, which I create through, it's not intentional, but clearly through this, like it wouldn't be welcome to do so.
Right. Yep. So totally makes sense. What I'm curious about, and let me take one more swing and then I'll abandon this line of inquiry if it doesn't sort of get us there. What I'm really curious about is, let me share from over here first, because I've got some of this too. Like I learned growing up, oh, there's a lot of faces that tend to look in my direction. I imagine you got that too. Just naturally, we're attractive people, where we bring a lot of the essence of presence and radiance, and that draws a lot of attention. And I learned like, ooh, that's uncomfortable because I get to see people when they're not impressed. They don't like what I'm doing. And so I became hypervigilant and I learned to like present a flawless persona. And I also learned to look for certain things in the world that were indicators I needed to turn up being the way that I knew would get me positive feedback, or if not that, not negative feedback. Mm. So I would look for, like, if someone did this while they were talking to me, for those listening, I'm looking at my watch, that was really dangerous. And that would spin me up faster in the strategies, because that means this person's bored of talking to me. I'm being too much, they're uninterested. So I'm kind of curious, like, what are the things you're looking for inside of this paradigm of ensuring you're not too much, ensuring you're not some big giant weirdo?
Yeah, it's I hadn't really been aware of that before, but that when you said the one about the watch, I was thinking, oh my goodness, I would hate that. I would be really conscious if I noticed someone do that.
Okay. And in your group of friends, none of you wear watches, right?
Well, I guess they might say, well, most of them probably don't.
I'm just having fun.
I think I'd more expect them to say like, oh, what's the time I need to, I mean, most of them end up like staying late anyway, but yeah, it's more likely to happen if it's not a friend, I guess.
What were you looking for in your financial advisor?
In terms of in his being or as a service?
In terms of evidence that you were being weird and too much. Like, I'm making an assertion here that you are going into the world, especially when they ask you to talk about yourself, but probably all the time. But when asked to talk about yourself, that the hypervigilance comes on, like Lian becomes super attentive. And I'm curious what you're looking for that allows you to know you're safe or danger.
Yeah. Frowning, confused, okay. A confused look. I just thought of something. There's like one person, pretty much just one person who I know from my past who has made comments on Facebook before that are a really good example. I've only just thought of this, a really good example of the thing I fear, to the point where I've almost unfriended him, not because I don't like him, but because I actually think of what he might say when I post something. And then I thought, actually, no, I can see my work is to like be with that and be in the experience of that and see. So hence I haven't, but he will like mock me. Like he'll say something that's I'm trying to think of.
I get like snide or sarcasm or something like that.
Yeah. It's not like I want to be taken seriously, but I don't guess want to be like mocked for. It's hard, isn't it? It's not like I want someone to think like, oh, she's really serious and this is really serious stuff. It's not that I'm looking for that, but there is definitely a kind of mocking where someone's coming from. And I guess it does really take, I think it's when I'm being quite earnest in whatever it is that I'm sharing, and then it's kind of mocked. That's definitely the.
It's not me you're talking about, is it?
Sorry?
It's not me you're talking about, is it? Okay. So we've got looking at watch, frowning, confusion. Is there anything else you can see might like?
Yeah, that mocking. You didn't. That's the main one. The mocking is the main one, Adam. You're noting.
Right. Well,
wrong.
Mocking is one step further. Is my hunch.
Okay.
Because usually it sounds like how this goes is I'm like, hey, Lian, what do you do? And you're like, I'm guessing that what happens, it all occurs right now like this big blob. You're just like, I get tongue
Yes.
tied and nothing works. But I'm guessing that if we slowed it down, like you'd slow down a film reel, and we looked at the individual panels, we would see like, first there's some fear triggered. And then Lian's going to take a swing because you're in front of people and you're like, and you're committed to something beyond this. So you start to speak. And then very quickly, there's like stuff, indications you're looking for over there. You start to see one of them, like maybe they crease their eyebrows or they're not totally sure. And that means, oh my God, it used to be I'm being too much, but now it's coupled with I'm being too much, or I'm being weird about this, or whatever it is. And then the next one is turn it up or get even more in your head and less in your heart.
Mm.
Is this sounding at all accurate?
Yes, I was just checking through from that example with the financial advisor. And that was definitely one of the better ones. It was easier to see slower because I actually said more.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember the first thing I said was a bit whack. And then he actually seemed like he whatever I said, even though it wasn't great, he obviously got it and went, oh yeah, it's like such and such and such and such. And then it kind of like, because I got that sense of, oh, he gets it and he's interested. From then on, it kind of went quite easily, but it was only did go quite easily because his response was positive. If it like, that sounds really out there. In fact, that's often how Chris, my husband, describes what I do. It's a bit out there.
Right. Which I would imagine might feed into this a bit.
Yeah, might do.
Yeah.
I think there's so much there already. I don't think it probably makes much of a dent, but I guess I am aware of that.
Well, yeah. And my intention is not to put Chris under the bus at all in any state, but like, of course we all find a partner who like kind of in a way also reaffirms some of our childhood mythology. So if you have a myth that you're a bit out there, you're going to find a man who probably adores you for it, but also it's kind of like, she's a bit out there. And that's going to just, at this point, it's not what's driving the train, but it's another log on the fire to keep it moving forward. Okay. So pick a moment where you would have liked to have this go differently, where you got this kind of hijack, because it sounds like things are going and then like sometimes people express interest and then you kind of like drop into yourself and you're like, okay, we can do this. And other times it's like always tenuous at the start. You're looking, you see the thing that's scary and then boom, you get hijacked and then you're up in your head and you're weird and making true all of the things you're afraid might be true about you a little bit, right? Oh, she's out there. She can't even tell you what she does. She's really orbiting Jupiter.
Do you mean pick a previous example and how I would have liked that to have gone differently?
Yes.
Yeah. There's one.
And something recent, ideally.
Well, this one, it really stands in my mind because it's probably one of my worst ones.
Nice.
It's not that recent. I think it was from not last summer. It was the summer before, if that's recent
enough. Yeah.
So in short, I'd had all of my son's class back to our house or garden because it's in the summer at the end of the year. It's become a bit of a tradition where we invite all the children back. We've got a massive garden, so it's not as crazy as it sounds. And at the end of the day, there were probably about, I don't know, 4 or 5 mums left who the kind of bulk had gone. And we were just sitting around table, probably having a glass of wine, just kind of chilling while the children played. And one of the mums, who I'm not close friends with, she's lovely, but we're kind of, just acquaintances. She said the dread question, what is it you do, Lian? And she's definitely one of those people who, she's very forthright. I think she's Hungarian, and she says herself, like, much more direct, doesn't mess around like English people do. And so
which is hilarious, like English people messing around, so like stiff upper lip.
And so she'd be my probably worst example of someone who is likely to frown and think what I do is just really out there and pointless and all the rest of it. And bearing in mind, this was to a woman, and I work mainly with women, and a group of women who all probably would have been really interested in the work I do. And I did I can't remember the words I used, but it was one of my worst ones where I just really went, oh, it's a bit hard to explain kind of coaching. Yeah. And then what's that child got? It was like that. It was just horrendous.
Got it.
And
so
even the little I said, she frowned and looked like strange woman, probably because of how I had replied to it. So yeah, I created the perfect example of what I most dread.
Yeah. Can you see how like what,
yes.
And it all makes sense, right? But it's like from fear, there's a response designed to protect, but it actually creates the very thing we're afraid of.
Yes,
People are left like
Werner Arhard quote that we both like about anytime you're trying to do X to avoid Y, you create more of a,
more of
basically
Y.
What you resist persists, really.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So, and I'm guessing it's really hard to explain, blah, 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 is not really speaking from your heart.
Totally. No, it's just me trying to survive.
So in that moment, what would there have been to share just from your heart?
God, that's a great question.
Sorry about all the other ones before this.
I think it's because I've thought about this so much and I've never asked myself that question. I've thought of all the things I could have said. I've never thought of kind of what was really there to be said, like what was in my heart. So wow, it's so funny how unavailable that is to me because of how practiced I am at like not even going there. It's so funny because like what would be in my heart would be to share the amazing work I do. I love what I do so much and I feel so privileged to do it. I know the transformation it creates. And then even when I think of sharing that, immediately think, oh my goodness, that makes me sound so egotistical, so big-headed, so up myself, back to the whole, it sounds too much. So even though that is in my heart to share, I can see that straight away the fear comes back in, like, oh my gosh, you do that, you've created that thing again.
Got it. And so are you saying what there was to share in your heart was just how much you love what you do and to share from that place?
Yeah, because that's what I'm really present to. It isn't just a job description. It is, what I do is this incredible work of women reclaiming themselves, reclaiming their freedom, reclaiming their bodies. And that's, A, it's kind of interesting, and B, it is what I'm passionate about and love. But it's, so that would be the honest answer.
And what about the stuff that succeeds it?
Sorry, what was the word?
The stuff that follows it?
Oh, okay. I thought you said succeeds, but I was thinking of the other meaning of succeeds. What do you mean in my imagined scenario, in the real scenario?
Yes. So, in the real scenario, it went a weird way. So we're kind of, we're hypothetical, but like,
next.
Yeah. Well, so what I heard you say was what was in your heart to share would have been like, one, I love what I do so much. It's so amazing. But it wasn't just that was speaking for, like, if your heart was fully open, there would have been that to share. And there would have also been like, and I'm really afraid that sharing this makes me sound egotistical. And like, I think I'm full of myself and I'm afraid of that.
There would be that to share too.
Uh-huh. And if she frowned, what would there be to share?
It feels a bit irresponsible, but I guess the fact that her frowning kind of confirms my fear.
Uh-huh. Well, so let's just pull that apart a little bit, right? You make her frowning mean that you're right about your fear, as opposed to like, oh, you're frowning over there. That means that my fear is right, right?
Yeah,
it's a little subtle, but
way of saying it, but yeah,
right.
If that was available to me, yeah, for sure.
How would that have been to share from that place?
challenging for sure, but it's hard to explain. It's like when I say it's possible, I actually don't know if it is possible in the moment, but it feels possible as in it feels maybe desirable, probably a better way of saying it. Like as much as that's scary, that actually feels like a lovely thing.
Yeah, it sounds like right now there's a lot of figuring out that happens.
Yeah.
Like once someone gets there, you're like, what's the right way to do this? How do I share this properly? I can't read the expression on yours. You okay?
Anyway, so it's a bit pointless to even try and figure out how to say this properly.
Well, but
I mean, it's literally just damage limitation normally.
Well, it's pointless and it's not. Like in figuring it out, there's a separation from like we get to go up into our head, away from the scary place in our heart. And eventually the conversation is going to move on instead of being in what's really scary, which is like sharing from your heart and having been rejected.
Yeah.
In doing that, at least when we're like, like being weird, even if they do reject us, like, well, that wasn't really what I was trying to, that's not my real truest heart.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
rejected me, but it's because I was being
really
weird.
Vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So it still sucks being rejected, no doubt about it. But it's like, the suckiness is less sharp.
Yes.
Than if you were to really like, and now this, and this is what's there for me.
Yeah.
What's present for you?
I was kind of I tried to think how to say this in a way that doesn't make you sound like you've just coached me to this really obvious thing. But it's just,
that's okay.
It was just like, oh my goodness, it feels almost like obvious that could be a possibility. And it's kind of odd that it's just not occurred to me before.
Yeah, I'm okay with obvious. I mean, that's, you know this well too, right? Like what coaching really creates is a simple, it's so obvious it's stupid, but it's also so obvious we can't see it. That's the nature of this stuff. I think it's actually like quite an acknowledgement of this conversation that it's like, wow, that's so obvious and it hasn't occurred to me.
Yeah, yes, it is. I just didn't want it to sound like, right, I've just seen this, but it's really obvious, Adam. But I feel really touched because as you know, my work is not just my work. It's kind of, I guess, anyone's work who wants to live, open-hearted, expansive life. It's being vulnerable and being my truth is something that I'm so committed to, and I'm empowering in so many other places. And like, this is just, of course, this is like probably one of the hardest places, and so a perfect place.
Yeah, nice. You feel quite soft in this moment.
Yeah, I think it's the it's really weird. It's like it's like it's permission to just be me and like be okay with me being me. Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Just feeling that.
Yeah. I think that's what it is. It's like, I guess it's that welcome, is I'm giving myself that welcome that I'm thinking is not there.
Yeah. I have a few assertions around this, but like, as is often the case, right? Our strategies are designed, it's like the quote you just mentioned, our strategies are designed to avoid a thing happening. And what sets us free is going towards the thing that we're afraid of having happen, not forcing it, because forcing it's different, right? You could sort of be like, okay, I need to be okay with people rejecting me in my fullness, and then you could sort of express your fullness in such a way that you know it's going to be rejected, and then you get to still be in control of it. So then they're not really rejecting you for you, they're rejecting you for what you've given them that creates the rejection. So it's not about forcing it, but like really about allowing it.
Yeah.
So ironically, the thing I really see might set you free is like not getting so much. I mean, I know you and I have been in conversation about this for a while too, like not getting all positive responses, but really being willing to express yourself in such a way that people might be like, that made no sense, or I don't understand why people would pay for that.
Yeah.
Or I'm channeling my dad right now. Or whatever. I love him very much, and he breaks my heart every time he says that. Whatever it is that would put that into the space where people have that opportunity, because that's a part of their full expression.
Yeah.
Right? Like as long as you're managing how much they get to respond to, in a way, you're limiting their ability to be fully expressed too.
Yeah, for sure.
What's going on?
Don't know. I feel just I don't know, it's a funny feeling, kind of like humble, which seems like an odd thing to feel. Maybe humble's not quite. I think when you said like soft is, I think it's like in a bizarre way I've been holding up this like protection, even though it's not actually needed very often. And it feels like that's just like, oh, I don't need that.
Yeah. People will get so much from being given permission to not like you. Sounds really weird. Do you know what I mean by that? Like from you being willing to like express yourself that way and let them have whatever reaction they have. It's such a, I really want to preemptively honor you for the practice, because that's such a noble gift to give people, to be willing to be given that feedback, knowing what a gift it is to you and also to them. Like that's really, it's divine work. It takes something really special to be willing to provide that. Now, I really honor that. You're one of the people I know is really committed to that, and I really honor you for that, Lian.
Thank you. It's so funny to think like how I just haven't been doing it there.
Yeah, because you're masterful at it over here. And I know that, and I love that about you. Like you're so fully, it's one of the things that makes our conversations really fun, is we both get to be really fully expressed in them. And of course, right? Just a new place for that edge to be practiced.
Yeah.
What do you think might be some good ways to practice this? Like how could you deliberately put this into some kind of practice?
Well, I think the reason this felt really particular, I mean, it's been, as I say, an ongoing thing for years, but this feels quite linked to me choosing to put myself on stage, which is a weird way to say it, but do more presentations, talks, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And which in a way is again like expressing myself in real life. Albeit it's been, there is a definite welcome there, but I've already been thinking like, oh my goodness, then when I stop my talk, they're going to want to talk to me, and then I'm back in my same like loop. So I've got 2 of those coming up in the next few weeks, so I'm going to have a whole bunch of opportunity to practice.
And how will you practice? What will it look like?
Energetically, I think be available to it, because I think I'm quite masterful at not making myself available for certain experiences without even having to directly make that clear. I think I can give quite an energetic like no to that. And so I think even just being available for that kind of conversation in itself, and I'm going to be in a situation where that conversation is almost inevitable, particularly if I'm open to it. And then, I think the practice is just allowing whatever's here to be out there.
Nice. one way you can practice, if it feels like, if your head, because there's that fear-based part that's like, I got to keep you safe. If that just feels so strong and you can't release it, you can always practice just doing it 1% more. So instead of whatever you're currently willing to share, like see if you can get just over that threshold where your armpits start to sweat. Or if that's too gross for you, whatever would be an analog that you'd be, but we want to be practicing in a way that feels like, oh my God, what's going to actually happen now that I've done this? So like 1%, 2% more. Yeah. Do you think you'd be up to take that on?
Yes. Yeah.
Cool. Sure. Nice. That feels awesome.
It does. It does. I feel, I don't think I'd realized how much this was the thing about doing those talks was big, and I didn't quite realize how much this part was also a big part of why that was big. And so I just feel, just a real kind of softness around the whole thing, that it's just more of me being who I'm committed to be in the world.
Yeah. It's such a gift for people, because I see a lot of people with the same stuff you and I have around this. So like fear about getting that negative feedback. So then we construct really great strategies. Dog wants in.
It'll be a nightmare. Give me a sec. Sorry.
Yeah, you bet.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So, afraid of getting that negative feedback, and yet feeling called to the stage. So, and what you get is a lot of people that become really brilliant at speaking from the stage because it's safe. No one, I mean, maybe you're going to get heckled. Yeah, but that person's going to get kicked out, right? Like, it's so rare. It is edgy to get up there, but there is also like this ironic degree of safety.
Yes.
And the real edge is like that willingness to put ourselves out there and then to stand and let people impact us in return. And that really is what really, those are the people, the leaders that people really are left inspired and blown away by, as opposed to the ones that sound really good and we listen to for a few months and then we move on to the next person because we're like, oh, that's cool. I like what you're saying, but you're kind of impenetrable. Cool. I want to finish by acknowledging you, but is there anything else for the conversation that we've had today to feel complete, or at least this part of it?
No, I feel really good. Thank you. It feels like we created the holy grail that I wanted at the beginning. So
nice. It's cool.
Yeah, really good. Thank you.
May I acknowledge you?
Of course.
Cool. You don't ask for it enough. So so thanks for being with that. First of all, me like flicking you just with love. And I really speak that from like, I just adore you so much, Lian. I think you're brilliant, radiant, such an inspiration. I was sharing with you, and I want to share with everyone else what you're up to as we wind this down, but like how proud I am in a funny kind of way. Like I really honor what you're creating. And I feel like I get to learn and gain something from just witnessing you in the act of stepping deeper into your own leadership. Thanks for the humility and trust to be on this conversation with me. It's different, right? Like, I mean, we're both kind of practiced in being client, but it's different in our relationship.
Yeah. Like, sorry, my dog's making all sorts of noises. A double weird thing, being coached by a friend and live. Wow.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for I really honor your courage and your commitment. I get the fear attached to this, and I really honor the courage that you're willing to practice on like a daily, hourly basis, and to just keep putting yourself out there and to give people the gift of being able to impact you. Holy fuck. We need so many more people doing that. And you're really modeling it. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Are you getting banged on the door? Do you need to go straight away, or do you have time for a quick debrief?
I have no idea what the time is.
We're bottom of the hour.
Yeah, I have for another 5 minutes or so.
Great, that's perfect. So anything that you were present to, like in this conversation, any sort of like, oh, I thought we'd go here, we zigzagged that way, or just anything that's there for you?
No, I came to this quite empty. I came to it empty, knowing that I had had so many conversations around this. I almost didn't want to bring too much of like, but I've already looked at that and I already know that, Adam, which would just be really not fun for you or me and not very like, what's the point? So yeah, I didn't really come with an expectation. I was like, really wanted, there was a possibility there for sure, but
Yeah.
it could have gone anyway and I wouldn't have been surprised because I was up for anything.
Yeah. It's cool. Me too. Like when anytime someone shares, you fill out that form that I give you and it's like, here's what I'd like to work on. And I always have a part that's like, well, just some thought. Sometimes it's a judgment like, oh, brother, we're going to be working on this, or, oh, no, I don't know how to do that, or, whatever it is. And my practice is always, let's just let all that go away so we can be with the magic that gets co-created. And I think that's such a cool thing about this line of work that you and I get to be in. And it's also what can mess me up when people are like, so tell me about your process. I'm like, I don't have a process. It's like we sit in a room and something happens.
It's magic.
Totally. Yeah. But real magic that really works. And yeah. One thing I was really present to was the moment you shared like, oh, I do practice, but I can't think of a single time when it hasn't been like a positive result. And how what I was present to in that moment was like how sneaky and subtle our ego can be, where it's like it sort of gives us a bone. It's like, well, here, you're practicing, look, you're doing the work, but it then has us do the work in a way that sort of allows us to stay a bit safe and not have to be with that thing that we're afraid of. And that's not to say you're a fool or you're getting eaten by your ego or anything like that, but just more I'm kind of in awe of the human condition and how like adept we are at managing fear and staying safe from it. And boy, what an incredible machine we are. Yeah.
Yeah, we are. Yeah.
Tell us. Oh, go ahead.
It just never ceases to surprise and delight me, like how much more there's always to see. And it's like a combination, like there's always more to see, and also it's kind of the same things we see over and over again.
Yes. Yeah, totally. Yeah, seeing it's like fractal. We're like, oh, I've totally got it, I understand. And you zoom out and you're like, what? Yeah. Didn't I already be here? And it's like, well, yes and no. It's a new place. And yeah. So you're up to a million things. What are some of the things? Look, you're going to have to practice right now, Lian. What are some of the awesome things? Yeah.
Oh, wow. Yeah, this feels suddenly really high stakes. Like, oh God, I've now got to do this. So what am I up to? The thing I'm really present to that I was sharing with you just before we jumped on the call is I run a circle stroke course for women called Wake and Wild Feminine, where it's, oh my goodness, it's just the most beautiful work. It's about women reclaiming their bodies, reclaiming the relationship to their bodies, connecting into their intuition, their body's wisdom, expanding their capacity for pleasure, discovering like who they want to show up as, rather than this kind of society's idea of this is what a woman should be and this is how she should look. And so I've been doing that for the last, I don't know, year or two. And the last one I am enrolling for, that starts next week, I think it is, was sold out and then some, and then gave me this idea, what if I created something that's for more women? And so I had that idea on Saturday, and today launched opened it for enrollment. And it's called Wake and Wild Feminine : Unraveling the Body. And so this is going to be a kind of, it's not so deep. I mean, a lot of women are very scared of Wake and Wild Feminine because it goes so deep, so raw, so intimate. This is going to be a kind of lighter step in that direction. Still really valuable work, but not doesn't require so much so fast. And just as we jumped on, I had my first enrollment, so hours after it opened. So yeah, I'm just delighted and so excited to be doing that work with many more women potentially.
I've gotten to be with you, Lian, as Were we friends when you started the first one?
Yes, I think so.
I
Yeah.
think, yeah, I think we were
Yeah.
friends when you were launching that. And so I've gotten to be with Lian both as she's in her own work and then like in her work as it shows up in leading this work and the evolution of it. And so for any women that appeals to, I think really highly of who Lian is as just a leader and someone committed to her own work. So definitely check that out.
Thank
And
you.
then you have an awesome podcast that you and I have we done a hat trick? We've done a hat trick on there, right? I
I
think
don't know.
maybe.
I
You
don't
get
know.
to hear her infectious laugh a great deal, and she has amazing guests and a huge range of topics and conversations, right?
Yes, yeah. It's my, at some point it's been a bit of an unloved baby, but it is my baby. And yeah, really, really proud to be able to say this has been going how many years it is. I always forget, 6 or 7 years. We're up
Yeah,
to something like 272 episodes. And
amazing.
yeah, shows no sign of stopping. Do you want me to give
Hmm.
URLs for this stuff?
Where do they go for Primal Happiness? That's the name of the podcast,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, well, if
Yeah,
they go to primalhappiness.co, all of what I've just spoken about can be found there.
awesome. That includes the courses and everything.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. I've just put a comment. Oh, that didn't work. I'll do it like this: primalhappiness.co, not .com,
That's
.co.
right.
It's very
Yeah.
posh,
It'll
very
be changing
efficient.
soon. I ought to mention this. In fact, this is only the second time I've said this publicly. We're going through a rebrand. When I say we, co-founder Jonathan Wilkinson and I are going through a rebrand, and will be soon called, and we have got the .com. It's the first .com we've had in years, wakingthewild.com.
Oh, lovely. Right. Because he runs a program called Waking the Wild Masculine, right?
Yes,
And then
yeah.
you have
And
Waking
then
the
we
Wild
also
Feminine.
do coaching programs together and separately. So we've also have a program called Waking the Wild Sovereign, which involves one-to-one work with both of us. So
Oh,
yeah.
cool. Nice. Check out Lian and her partner Jonathan's work. I've had less experience with Jonathan, but I absolutely trust any man that Lian is partnering with. And everything I've seen from Jonathan feels really trustable. So definitely check them both out. Lian, thanks so much. It's been super fun. It's such a treat every time we get to talk. Lots of laughter, and you've got some delicious takeaway food now, right?
Yes, yeah. In fact, Chris is going to tell me if I'm still sitting here, but yes, Indian takeaway any minute now.
Oh, super jealous. Okay, cool. Everyone have an amazing weekend. Thank you again, Lian, and we will see you guys in 1 week. Bye for now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.